Yes, Felipe mentioned something that I think is really important in this conversation, and that is the cultural change. There's, the challenge of the data and then the model. And when we think about incorporating technology in these human or historically very human transactional relationships, there's two components to this. There's the technology that we're using, that we're building, and then there's the change management strategy, the behavioral economics around aligning incentives and playing on the same team for a unified vision and goal. That end goal being data actually does unlock a lot of potential for, as I previously mentioned, streamlined efficiencies, reducing costs, better economics and prosperity across the supply chain. And so when we start to approach this conversation with the perspective that we can actually mutually benefit from an alignment of investing in technology that can work well together, then I think it benefits everyone. So let's talk really briefly about that technology. When we go through digitization strategies across the supply chain, there have been a lot of bespoke technologies that's been applied for corporations. They might build a custom solution, for example. And with all of these custom solutions that are being built, there are multiple different languages, coding languages that these solutions could be built in. These coding languages then have different means of being able to communicate with itself and different means of recording the data that it is intaking. So we then have multiple different systems and multiple different languages, recording data in multiple different ways, and we then have data silos. It's no wonder why it's really challenging to have a seamless handoff process using APIs, using programming languages, where one system can transfer data and hand off to another. We have to start thinking about, well, what is the data that's being recorded? And how is it being recorded? What terminology is being used? How do we translate that from one system to another? We need to start really thinking about, as an industry, different standards that we can establish, different schemas that we can use, so that way this translation can become easier. And we even did this as an industry around the quality analysis of coffee, and thinking through the Coffee Quality Institute and now the SCA cupping protocols. We have two things. One, a standard of the way that we are analyzing coffee, grading coffee, and a lexicon of flavor profiles that we can associate with the coffee. This allows each person to be able to say, this coffee is this quality and it tastes like this. So when I say that, you from across the other side of the world can understand what I mean by that. Technology works the same way. If we as an industry can start developing data schemas that can be standards, then I think it would provide a much easier means of integration. And we're seeing some standards popping up with documents, different customs documents, a lot of even food standards for importing, exporting. There's a baseline there, but I think along supply chain logistics, having better data schema standards would be useful for everyone. There's also, in thinking about wanting to have more interoperable systems, concern that I've heard before is, do I really want to share my data? And how much is my data proprietary to me? And I think in thinking through that, and I might say it's maybe less about the proprietary data that we really need to start integrating, but it's the events around the data that we can start communicating that provides the contextual information about the fully traceable product, the history of the product, the transactional history, the provenance, the origin. And these events, I think, can still provide the necessary data that's can be used for logistics efficiency gains without that proprietary data being breached. So I think we can still create a system, a protective system, but a collaborative system. This has to be a team sport. So I think in thinking through creating systems that speak well with each other. Looping back to what I was saying before, the only way that we're going to get that full level of data visibility is if we have technology that is accessible to everyone. Is that if we are collecting this data at every point in the supply chain, is if we have these events starting at the farm level. So I think just as important of saying, is it interoperable? Is it accessible? And is it a democratized access to this technology? I think is just as important piece.